What is going on, YouTube? It is Saturday and we're here to finish this project. Now give it a thumbs up if you made it this far, and definitely looking forward to this because this will come full circle and wrap everything up. It's going to take our front end code here, which we're going to add JavaScript eventually later, and we're just going to connect it back to this back end of our node in our MongoDB, our node server in our MongoDB. So this is going to be probably a long video because we have a lot to do. So let's jump into it. And you're probably wondering where all our style sheet went. It's right there, hidden. There are a few different ways that we can do this. Axios, Ajax, XML, HTTP request, and that is what we are going to use today. I'm not going to touch on Axios or Ajax or any other thing. We're just going to go simple, straight, vanilla JavaScript with this. So without further ado, let's jump into it. You do want to make sure you have your node up and running, and make sure we have our website up and going. So we have that. Let's get to it. Alright, so we'll be able to remove all these items, and they will be added dynamically. So we will have to create this item inside this item container, which will also contain a p tag and an I tag. So when we get that back from our database here, we have to create that. So that is the first step I'm going to do, because it's going to be used in a few different functions. So instead of writing it multiple times, we're going to write it one time and use the function. So let's get to it. Inside the body tag, right above the end body tag, outside the div, let's go with the script tag, because I'm just going to throw all the JavaScript right inside of this. So let's create a create element function. So function create elements. So we'll use this multiple times. Well, it can be used for one element or multiple, so I'll just add the S. So we have this div class in this item container, so we do have to create this div. So let's go with a var item equals document dot create element, and then we can say we want a div. We have that, and then we can say item dot add, or we can add a class name. So class list dot add, and then we want to pass we want to pass this item name into the class, so that way we can still use our CSS on it. There's that, and then we want to set an ID to it. So this will take two parameters. It will take an ID and a name. So what we want to do is now take our item and say item.id is equal to the ID we pass into it. All right, now that we've created this div class item, next we want to create this p tag. So now we need to say var, I'm gonna name it p tag equals document dot create element, and then we're gonna say we want a p tag, and then we can say var new text is equal to document dot create text node, and then we can pass in the name, because that's what we're going to get back here. So we can pass in the name. It'll be a string, and it will attach it to this p tag. And then on top of that, we need to create this I tag with the close and the style. So this is going to be a little bit involved here. So what you're going to need to do is going to say var close is equal to document dot create element again. Then we're going to need an I tag. And then this is where we're going to need a function that's going to wrap an on-click function, so that way we can pass this ID to it. Because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tag the ID to this item, that way, or on this delete, that way we know which one we're deleting. So we're going to need to open parentheses and say function, and I'm going to pass in the ID, and then so we're going to open up inside of this, and then we're going to say close dot on click is equal to a function that takes no parameters. This is where we're going to have to create a delete function. So I'm going to say delete, and we're going to pass in the ID, because when we click on this, we'll call a function called delete, which is going to delete whatever one we click on here. We can get out of this, and then now we can jump outside of this parentheses, and we can pass in the ID, So we'll be able to pass in the ID, which will be passed to this function, and then we can use the ID inside of delete. Now we need close dot class list, because we need to add a class dot to the I tag. So we need a FA, so I'll take that right there. And then we need to add another class, which I'm sure you can do this in one line. I'm doing it in two. Class list dot add, and then we need the other class, so FA close. And then we're going to need to add the CSS text. So this is going to be close.style.css text. And then we can say is equal. Since we have this, we can take that and pop it right inside of there. And that will take care of the CSS. And then we can say ptag.append the new text element up here. So that way this name will be attached to this p tag, and then we can say item.append child p tag, and then the item.append child again, and then we can append our closing element, and then we can return our item. All right, let's head over to our browser and see if any errors. Nothing so far. There's really no way to check what we just wrote yet. So, but we'll be able to do that here shortly, because we're going to create our get, which over in Mongo we got 3 objects. So we're going to be able to return those 3 objects and add it to our item container. So now that create items or elements are done, we can go ahead. I'm going to jump down above, push that down below and jump above it, because we're going to create the get function. So function get, and I'm going to write this out to a point, and then I'm going to speed up because it's kind of duplicated through the other ones, and I can run through it once I get to it. But in the meantime, get is going to take no parameters. So we're going to need a var request, and that is going to be equal to a new XML request. And then we can say request dot open. I'm actually going to close this over here because it is going to get a little crazy. Dot open, and then we're going to say we need a get, and then we're going to say our endpoint of where that is stored at, and then we can say true. And then we need a pass get a request dot set the request headers. That's going to be content type, and then we need an application /x www. And this is a type of a form, so URL encode it. We should be done with that, so we can go ahead and add a comma there. Then we're going to say request dot on ready state change, and this is going to be equal to a function with no parameters, and we can go ahead and open that up. So when we get our stuff back, we're going to say if request dot ready state is equal to 4 and request dot status is equal to 200, because otherwise nothing is working. So we can jump inside of that, and then we can say var items JSON, because that's what we're going to get back here. So JSON dot parse, and then we can pass in our request dot response text, and then we can say let our we have to grab our container element right here. So var container is equal to document dot get element by ID, which our ID is item container. And before we go any further, let's go ahead and console log our items JSON, so that way we can see what we got. So we save that. But before we head over to our browser, let's go ahead and call the get. We do need to call get at the very bottom here. So get right after we add function, so this, and then we need to say res request dot send, and we're going to pass in nothing, so we can say null. And there's our array of 3 items. Fantastic. Now we know that is working. We can say var container element ID, grab that container item, and then we can say we need a for. So for var I is equal to 0, I is less than items JSON dot length I plus plus. Let me go ahead and remove this console log there. And now we can take our items JSON and we'll be able to index it now. So item is equal to create elements, and this is where we grab our items. So items dot or JSON dot or bracket I, and then we want to look for this ID and this name. So the index and value at ID and name and test. So we want to say ID. We're just going to pass down the ID, and then we're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going to look for the name. And this is going to hold the item, and then we can say container dot append. I can spell correctly, append child. And we can pass in the item. That should do it. So let's go ahead and see what we got. Oh, there we go. We forgot the S. Steak, carrots, Pop-Tart, test, another one, another, and one. So there we go. Beautiful. Fantastic. So let's jump over to our browser, our code. We can actually get rid of these now because we no longer need them, as they are going to be added dynamically. Awesome. So just to see what we got. What is in our database. So let's go ahead and next write our add function to get this working. So in order to do that, we will want to add an ID to this. So add button. So make sure you add an ID to our button here in our HTML. We also want to add an ID to this because we want to be able to access the input. Another create get. Let's go ahead and write our add. Let me go ahead and write this stuff out really quickly. Alright, so yep, they all take the same, so we just have to modify a few things. So let's go ahead. We're going to need another get operation, so get, but this time we're going to change out this endpoint for add. So add, and then we need to pass in our parameter. So this is where we need to add our ID and name at. Oh, sorry. This will not take a parameter, but first we have to say var text is equal to document dot get elements by ID. This is where we use this ID on the input because we want to get that value. So input dot value. Now text will hold the value of whatever text is in this box. And then this is where we can say name plus and then text. Should probably make that name, but plus the text because it's appended to the name. Turn true. Content types a form, function, or ready state change. If request dot ready state is equal to 4 and request dot status is equal to 200. And this is where we're going to reuse our create element function. because we're going to append this on at real time. So var, need the request back because node and MongoDB is actually going to send back what we just added. So var items JSON again is equal to JSON.parse, and then request.response text. And then if we're good, then we can say text.value is equal. We can clear out the value that's stored, that was submitted. And then we can say var item container again. Whoops. Container is equal to document get element by ID, and then this is item container in there. Then we can say let the get of item, so var item is equal to create elements. We can pass in what we get back from this response. So items JSON, this is where we grab our ID again, but this time we're not going to index it with a number because we are only getting one back. So we can just go ahead and simply write ID. Let me turn this into a string, and then our items JSON and a name. So now we can take this item and we can append it to our container. So container.append child. This will take the item. All right. Now you know what the next step is to do to test it to see if we're working. So save it. But before we do that, it won't work because our button doesn't have a click event on it. So we're going to add that dynamically. We're going to say var add button is equal to document.get element by ID, and this is where our ID that we added for the button comes from. So our add button ID, add button, and this is where we're going to add our event listener. So add button dot add event listener, and this will be a click event. So click, and then we're going to say a function, and then add. Now we can test it to see if it works. Another test. Probably refresh the browser first. I can't spell. Alright, so our add works. Try this again. Look at our console. Add test. Go ahead and delete because we can test this all day long and our string is going to be populated. So we can't delete anything right now, so let's go ahead and write that out. So our delete function is pretty much going to be the same thing, so I can actually just go ahead and copy pasta this, so in our if block. But this time we're going to say, because we have appended that ID when we created the element to know which element we're looking for, this is where that's going to come in handy, so we can say container dot remove child. And this is going to take, the remove child is going to take in a value that we actually have to grab, because once we delete, we're going to pass in that, grab that ID on that click event. So var.id is equal, or value is equal to document.get element by ID. And this is actually going to look for an ID that we have to pass down. So ID, because we passed in the ID there. And we grab that element by ID by the ID. So if you're wondering why we can't use this ID and pass it down into here, is because remove child looks for an object, which is this, is what grab element grabs as an object. So we're good there. I should get rid of this text value, otherwise it's going to complain. So let's save it. That should be everything we need to do for this. I lied. We need to get, and then we got to say delete, and it's going to take a parameter of the ID is equal to plus the value, or in this case we can do the ID. Got to make sure your endpoint matches what you got on the backside here. So delete. All right, and refresh it, and boom. Oh, let's get rid of this one too. Boom. Let's keep going. Oh, we got nothing. Add a test. Boom, we're gone. Oh, wait, we're back again because it keeps loading in that add test. Not cool, man. Oops, don't want to save that. Carrots. add it on the list, refresh it, stays there, we delete it, and we're good. We're empty, we're done. The list, your shopping list is now complete. So what I propose to you guys, I can firmly say guys because my analytics show 99% of you that watch these videos are men and also non-subscribers, so we gotta work on that just a little bit. But yeah, we're good. Got it. Once we delete all this, add a message saying, hey, all your stuff's good to go, you're empty. There are some error checks we need to do. You don't want to just check on request.ready state, because otherwise, regardless of what it comes back, it's always going to look for this request response and try to parse it. So that way we have to do something like, hey, if this is empty, or if it's not a JSON object or something, you want to do something else. Otherwise, we can append the value. Same thing for all of these. Your backend, not very secure because we can take anything in this query ID. And we're not checking to see if it's undefined, if it's some garbage, if it's anything that is malicious. So keep that in mind. That is probably a little out of scope for this video series at least. At least you have a functional shopping list that works. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked it, make sure you drop a like down below because I do greatly appreciate it. And hope to see you guys next time. Probably be back to the data structures and algorithms videos for a little bit, but hope to see you then. See ya!